Parents, good evening. We have Ms. Shagufta with us, Ms. Shagufta Ahmed, who will be our speaker for today. And Ms. Shagufta is a renowned person in the field of Islamic. She's completed her all her qualifications. I mean, she has all her qualifications as well. So we welcome Ms. Shagufta on behalf of the Indian Academy team, ma'am. And the parents are here. You can go ahead and you can start your session. If you have any you can make it as interactive as you want. The parents are here, so you can go ahead, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sister Hajra, for that introduction. I hope I'm audible. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am, it's fine.
Okay, great. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم. To all of the parents, teachers, staff, and children of the Indian Academy Dubai, I send you warm greetings from Bahrain, and I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I'll be sharing a short presentation. So many of us, I hope all of us, alhamdulillah, in this holy month of Ramadan, we are fasting. But perhaps there are some contextual pieces of information that we may not be aware of. And I hope that my presentation today will enlighten you with more knowledge than you already had. And I hope that it will be inspiring for all of you. And if you have any questions, we can take them towards the end of the presentation. So the title of the presentation is Ramadan in the 21st century. We live in the 21st century, and this practice of Ramadan, or the practice of fasting, is a very ancient practice. So what I've done is I've actually divided my presentation into three parts. So we'll talk about fasting as a historical concept. Maybe we think that we people that are fasting only fast for Muslims, or we think that it's something very recent, but we will learn that fasting actually has been around for a very, very long time. Then we will talk about fasting in Ramadan specifically, and then we will talk about Ramadan and the SDGs. For those of you who are not familiar with the SDGs, I will introduce that concept as well, because as Muslims, I think it's very important. As an academic institution, it's very important for all of us to be in on this very global agenda that's taking place right now. So fasting in history. What is a fast? That's a very normal, very broad question, very general question. So fasting, if you think about it, it's really to abstain from something. It's to stay away from some kind of an act for a certain amount of time, perhaps in a certain number of days. What that act is different in different cultures, different religions, and different traditions. Now, when was fasting first recorded? So again, as I mentioned earlier, many of us think perhaps fasting is something recent, but if you go back and look at the history, fasting has been around for almost 2,500 years. So more than 2,500 years ago, there was a Greek physician called Hippocrates. He was basically a doctor, and he prescribed fasting as a way for curing his patients. So the idea that you stay away from food, stay away from water, will actually help your body to heal is a very, very ancient concept. So perhaps we read, in the modern day and age, we read about intermittent fasting. The celebrities, they do intermittent fasting to keep their bodies fit. So we think it's a modern thing, but actually the whole concept of using fasting to heal the body is something very, very ancient. People tend to think fasting is difficult on the body, it's torturous to the body, but on the contrary, if fasting is done right, it's extremely healing, as we will see in the further slides that even modern science has proven that. So if we move on to fasting in other religions, so I just wanted to, again, just so that we are aware of the entire context of fasting. As Muslims, we fast in Ramadan, but we need to understand that fasting in different ways has been practiced by different religions, different cultures, historically for a very, very long time. So if you look at fasting in Hinduism, there's many different types of fast in Hinduism, but one of them is perhaps very well known. It's called Karwa Chauth. Usually the Hindu women, the married women, they perform this fast, and they do it from sunrise until moonrise. And they also stay away from water and food. So, and they, of course, their concept is, they're doing it for their husband, for the long life of their husband, and so forth. So we'll talk about the intention of the Islamic fast a little bit later, but I want you to understand, the whole context of fasting by other cultures, what their intentions are, what their motivations are. If you move on to Judaism, in Judaism also there are many different types of fasts. The most famous one is the fast of what is called Yom Kippur. It's actually a very long fast. It lasts for 25 hours. So it starts from sundown and it goes until the night of the next day. And they also stay away from both food and from water. And they have their own concepts of atonement and forgiveness and so on. And then we talk about fasting in Christianity. Perhaps many of you have learned, know about the concept of Lent. Leading up to Easter, Easter just went by recently. 40 days before that, Christians, Catholics, different traditions, different sects of Christianity, they all have their own different versions. But the idea is to stay away from something, to abstain from something for a higher purpose. So this is a little bit of the background of fasting. And I wanted to put that in context because when we look at fasting in Ramadan, when we look at Islam, all in general, we as Muslims believe and understand that it is the last message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator, has been sending messages to humanity since the first prophet, since Prophet Adam alayhi salam, through all the plus or minus 124,000 prophets and messengers. And he's been sending the exact same message. He's been saying, believe in one God. He's been saying, believe in the prophets, be good people, believe in the hereafter, lead a good life. So the concept or the idea of what God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has been sending to humanity has been the same concept. What has happened as Muslims, we believe that the previous traditions have been distorted, the books have been distorted, and what we have as Muslims, the Holy Quran, and again, the month of Ramadan is also the month of the Holy Quran. So we actually celebrate the Holy Quran's revelation in this blessed month. So as Muslims, we believe that the Quran is being protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. And this is why no one can ever distort anything in it. And so as Muslims, we believe that we are the final version of the same message that the same God has been sending since the beginning of time. This is why you find similarities. So as Muslims, I think it's important for us to look for some of these similarities. As we live in this multicultural world, we live in a multi-plural world, it's important to look for similarities instead of looking for differences. When we look at similarities, we learn to be a big human family. As Muslims, we want to be part of a big human family where we contribute and we explain our religion in a way that people understand it as a religion of peace, as a religion of satisfaction, as a religion of success, of prosperity, both in this world as well as in the hereafter. So moving on to the second part of the presentation, which is again now fasting in Islam, in Ramadan. So as Muslims, of course, as I mentioned, our source of knowledge comes from the Holy Quran and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who brought the Holy Quran to us through the blessed ahadith. So if you look at the verse in the Holy Quran that talks about the Ramadan or the fasting, the whole commandment of fasting, as many of you probably already know, it's in Surah Al-Baqarah, the second chapter of the Holy Quran, in verse 183, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqoon. Sadaqallahu al-Azim, wa ballaghana rasuluhu nabiyyul kareem. So what does that mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing the believers. He's saying to the believers that fasting has been made obligatory upon you as it was made obligatory upon those before you. And we just saw that, right? We just saw that there is fasting in so many different traditions because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the same Allah, has been sending commandments about fasting to the previous people as well. It's just that we believe that those previous traditions have been distorted and the Quran is the final word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what is the purpose of fasting? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so that you may become pious, so that you may attain taqwa. And we'll talk about this concept of taqwa also a little bit in the further slides. Again, I also think it's important for us to understand, we've all heard of the 5 pillars, right? As children, we've been taught the 5 pillars of Islam, but maybe we don't know what the source of that is. Does anyone know, as Sister Hajra said, to make it interactive, does anyone know what is the source of the 5 pillars of Islam? Where does it say that we have 5 pillars in Islam? Does anyone know? I don't know if you're raising hands or Okay, no problem. So if you look at the Hadith literature, we just now talked about the Holy Quran, right? If you look at the Hadith literature, you will find there is a Hadith, and that Hadith is, I'll give you the name of the book. It's called the Sunnah of An-Nisa'i. It's one of the one of the many authentic books of Hadith. In that, there is a very beautiful Hadith, and if you allow me, I just want to give you a summary, just to give you a feel for what our religion is based on. So just to give you a quick summary, it was a beautiful time where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was seated with his companions, with the Sahaba Karam, and a man entered into their gathering. And that man was wearing clothes that were exceedingly white, and they were very clean. And his hair was jet black, exceedingly very black, very clean. He had no signs of travel upon him, and no one knew him. So it was very strange because, in a closed community like that of Mecca, either everybody knows each other, right? Or if you don't know each other, then whoever's going to come from outside, they will look a little bit tired, or their clothes will be dirty. Something will reflect their sign of travel. But this person was completely very bright in every way, and no one knew him. And he sat down, and he sat knee to knee with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he put his hand on the blessed thighs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, this stranger man said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell me about Islam. And that is where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually said to this man that, you tell us what is Islam. And then this man responds that it is the Shahada, it is praying the Salah, it is giving the Zakah, and it is fasting in Ramadan, and it is performing the Hajj. So this is, I'm just giving a very brief, very part of the Hadith, and Allah forgive me if I'm making any mistakes, but the idea is this is where the concept of the 5 pillars came from, is this interaction between this man who came and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and at the end of the Hadith, it was revealed, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam revealed that this man was none other than Jibreel alayhi salam. It was Jibreel alayhi salam who had come in the shape of a man, who had come to teach them the basics of Islam, and the Hadith continues to ihsan and so on. But this is where the root, or the source of the idea that Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and that Islam is based on 5 pillars. This comes from this particular Hadith. So moving on, as we know, Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar. The Islamic lunar calendar, Islamic calendar is based on the moon, and the 12 months in the Islamic lunar calendar, these 12 months, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself in the Holy Quran, he has told us that the months are 12. This is from Allah. It was not a human invention to make 12 months in a year. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says in the Holy Quran that Allah made the months 12. And of these 12 months, 4 of them are sacred, and from which one of the sacred months is the month of Rajab. So before Ramadan, 2 months before Ramadan begins, is the sacred month of Rajab. So when Rajab itself starts, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us to make a dua. And what is that dua? He said, Allahumma barik lana fi Rajabin wa Sha'bana wa ballighna Ramadan. That, oh Allah, bless us in Rajab and Sha'ban and bring us to Ramadan. So the idea is that we need to prepare for Ramadan 2 months in advance. It is like warming up. Like if you go to the gym, if you don't warm up and you start working out, it's very, very possible you will damage your muscles. So people that come to Ramadan just kind of cold turkey, as they call it, without any kind of warm up, sometimes they feel fatigued, they feel drowsy, they feel groggy. So to avoid all of that, we start preparing for Ramadan in Rajab. So we start fasting in Rajab, we start making up our old fast. So we start preparing our body so when Ramadan comes, we are truly ready to reap all of its blessings. So it's really important as Muslims to come back to this tradition, because I think as Muslims, we've sort of forgotten this. We forget the 11 months and we just come into Ramadan, and then Ramadan goes and then we forget Ramadan again until it comes back the next year. So we need to start going back to this original tradition, advice from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As soon as Rajab starts, we start praying for barakah and we start praying for reaching Ramadan. So as we mentioned earlier on, the purpose of Ramadan is taqwa. So what is taqwa? If you look at the meaning of the word taqwa, it means piety. It means God consciousness. The idea is that we recognize that Allah is with us, whether we are in the masjid or we are in the mall. What tends to happen is we have different behaviors in the mosque and we have different behaviors in the mall. It shouldn't be like that. As Muslims, our inside, our outside, our behavior needs to be the same. We need to be good Muslims no matter where we are. And that concept is the concept of taqwa, recognizing that no matter where I am, if I'm going to commit a sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching me everywhere. So if I need to stay away from sins and stay away from bad deeds, that is what taqwa is, to stay away from bad deeds. And how can we do that? We can do that if we recognize that no matter where we are, whether we're on the moon or we're on the earth, we're in our room privately, or we're in public space, in the mosque or in the mall, our Allah is watching us everywhere. So if we have that feeling, and that's what Ramadan helps us develop. If we have that feeling, we will develop taqwa. We will recognize that we have to stay away from the bad deeds. Again, a small narration is coming to my mind about a very pious personality in our tradition. He was a very pious man from India. When he was very young, only 4 years old, it was a very hot month of Ramadan and he wanted to fast. And he did. He started to fast as a young 4-year-old child. And, his father, he felt sorry for him and he said, no one's watching, it's very hot. If you want, go ahead and drink something or go ahead and eat something. And this young 4-year-old boy, what did he say? He said, no one is watching, but my Allah is watching. So this was the taqwa of this 4-year-old boy, because he was none other than the great Imam Ahmad Raza Khan, who's a very, very famous scholar from India. And he has written many, many hundreds of books, and he has, we can have a whole lecture series on him. But I wanted to let you know that as young as 4 years old, he recognized that Allah is with us. So even if someone else is telling me, it's okay, go ahead and do this, as a child, he already knew that Allah is watching us no matter where we are. So again, the idea is, for example, if we are on this, if we're driving, just as a small example, if you're driving and we see the police, we immediately, if we are overspeeding, we'll stop our overspeeding and we'll come into the speed limit, right? So we recognize the police is watching, and so we don't break the rules. So even though we should not never compare Allah with His creation, but that's the idea, that when we recognize that Allah is watching, we stay away from violating any of His rules. So this is what Ramadan helps us to achieve. It helps us to achieve taqwa and God consciousness. Now, how do we get to this level? How do we achieve this taqwa? Does it get achieved simply by staying away from food and water? That's actually a very good question, because our scholars teach us that there is not just one level of fasting. There's actually 3 levels of fasting. So the basic, the most fundamental level, where we stay away from food and drink and so on, this is just the very basic. It's the layperson's fast. It's the fast of the child. It's very, very basic. We think this is the ultimate, but this is really the basic level of the fasting. If you go to the next level, which is called the fast of the elect, this is where we begin to do what fasting is really requiring of us, where we start the fasting of the eyes. What is the fasting of the eyes? Where we see no bad deeds. We don't see any evil. We stay away from anything that is haram. The fasting of the ears, we stay away from all ill talk and lies and anything that is haram. We stay away, we keep our eyes away from that. Fasting of the tongue, especially fasting of the tongue, where we don't speak lies, we don't yell at people, we don't get angry, we don't commit any sin that is associated with the sun, we don't backbite, we don't slander, we don't do any of those tongue associated sins. That is called the fasting of the tongue. And then fasting of the hands, fasting of the legs. So fasting of the body parts, fasting of the limbs. This is now we are getting to the higher levels of fasting. This is what fasting really came to help us achieve. Not just staying away from food and water. Anybody can really do that. Like I said, a young child, you train a young child, they can easily do that. You train the body, they can easily stay away from food and water. The purpose of that, as we will learn in the next slide, is to develop that self-control, to develop that discipline that helps us to stay away from the sins of the body parts. And then the final level of fasting, which is the fast of the elect of the elect. In other words, people that are so engrossed in their connection, in their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they see nothing else but Allah. Their life is completely revolved and engrossed around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the fasting of the elect of the elect. It's showing me there's only 10 minutes left. Is that the case, Sister Hajra?
Ma'am?
It's showing me there's only 10 minutes left. Will the meeting end in 10 minutes? Because I have a lot of things to say.
No, I have upgraded it, ma'am. It will continue.
Okay, great. So I wanted to just share with you 10 key features of Ramadan. Many of you are probably already aware of this, but it's just nice to see it in a bullet format and to just get it in context. So fundamentally, obviously, the very first thing is the intention, because as Muslims, we know the hadith that says innamal a'malu binniyat, that our actions are based on intention. So if, for example, we are staying away from food and water, and we're fasting, for example, as a protest, for some other some political cause, yes, you would be fasting, but it will not be a Ramadan fast, because your intention is not to fast for Ramadan. So the intention, if you're fasting in Ramadan, it's very specific. We make the intention to fast for the month of Ramadan, for the sake of Allah, to attain piety, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what makes it a Ramadan fast. So it's very important to have the true intention. The next key feature is that this month of 30 days has been divided into 3 parts. This is also based on hadith. The 3 parts are called the 3 ashra. So the first ashra is the ashra of Rahman. It's called the first 10 days of mercy. The second ashra, which is the ashra we are currently in. Ashra is the Arabic word which means 10. It's the ashra of forgiveness. And the last ashra, which will start tonight in Bahrain, is the ashra of the deliverance from hellfire. So, of course, this doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is not there in the second ashra or the third ashra, or that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness is not there in the first ashra. No, that doesn't mean that. It just means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made these specific times to help us focus. So in the first 10 days of Ramadan, we are truly focused on the mercy of Allah. In the second 10 days of Ramadan, we are truly focused on trying to get our sins forgiven by reciting all of the du'as. And then the third ashra will be the ashra where we will continuously make dua to deliver us, yani to free us from the fire of hell and to give all of us Jannah. Ya Rab, Ameen. The third important feature of Ramadan is that good deeds are multiplied. So if there is a deed that is already a requirement, it's already a fard. So for example, the 5 prayers. We all know the 5 prayers, which are part of the 5 pillars of Islam. They are required as Muslims. We have to pray 5 times a day. If you are 10 years old as a child, starting from the age of 10, praying is a fard. But Allah's mercy, subhanAllah, that in the month of Ramadan, you pray 1 time, you get the reward as if you prayed 70 fara'id. SubhanAllah. And if you pray any of the sunan, any of the nawafil, you get the reward as if you are praying a fard. So for example, in the different times of prayer, we have nawafil prayers, we have tahajjud, which is a nafil, we have duha prayers. So there's many different types of extra prayers. And even in the 5 prayers, we shouldn't just pray the fard, we should always pray the sunnah. And in Ramadan, we should try our best to also pray the nawafil. If you pray, for example, the extra 2 rakahs in Maghrib of nafil, you will get a reward as if it is a fard. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies. You know how you have those sales, buy one, get one free type of sales. So this is like, buy one, get 70 free. So it's really a blessing, a time of blessing, and we should really take advantage of every single moment of Ramadan. We shouldn't let any single moment go by, because every moment is filled with so many blessings. There's actually a hadith that says that if Muslims knew how blessed Ramadan is, we would wish and pray that the whole year was Ramadan. And we do get that feeling when Ramadan ends, we feel, oh, Ya Allah, why did it end? We wish it would continue, and we anxiously wait for it to come back the next year. The next key feature is suhoor, which is the pre-dawn meal. And again, the pre-dawn meal, if you simply take the pre-dawn meal, it acts as an intention. And the pre-dawn meal is really important. It is really, according to hadith, what distinguishes our fast from the other fasts. So all the other fasts that I mentioned of the other religions, our suhoor is what distinguishes us from them. So really important to do the suhoor. Unfortunately, we see these days, people have the habit of They'll stay up all night and then they'll have their, they'll do the fajr and they'll go to sleep. This is not a good practice in Ramadan. In Ramadan, the practice should be that you do your Isha, you do your Taraweeh, which is, by the way, the next item. You do your Taraweeh prayers and then you go to sleep. You rest a little bit and then you get up maybe an hour before Fajr. You do your Tahajjud, you do your Witr prayer, you eat your Sahur, and then you do your Fajr, and then you do your Adhkar, you read Quran and so on. And then after, maybe you do your Ishraq, Salatul Ishraq, and then you can take a little bit of rest. This is a more healthy routine for Ramadan. Not that you are up all night, you eat all night, you pray Fajr, and sometimes people miss Fajr, and then they go to sleep. And then they get up at the time of Iftar. This is a very, very bad. Unfortunately, many people do this. It's a very, this is not the intention of fasting at all. You completely miss the boat. You completely miss the boat if you do this. As a matter of fact, there are hadiths where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that there are some people that all they get out of Ramadan is staying hungry. That's all they get. They get no rewards. So we don't want to be of those, right? We want to be of those Muslims who get all of these amazing rewards. So to get the rewards, we need to understand the context in which all of these things have been given to us. So Taraweeh, as I was mentioning, is one of these, the most special prayer. It is exclusive to Ramadan. We should try our very best to do it. It's a Sunnah Muakkada. In other words, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never left it. So we should do it. We should do 20 rakahs of Taraweeh and get all of the benefits that come with it. The next key feature, which as I mentioned earlier, was one of the most fundamental features, is that in Ramadan, we are celebrating the revelation of the Holy Quran, because it was in the month of Ramadan, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. That it is the month of Ramadan in which was revealed the Quran. So this month we should do our utmost to rejuvenate our connection with the Quran. We should learn the tajweed rules. We should recite the Quran every day. We should try to recite. We should recite the Quran. We should try to complete the recitation, the entire Quran in the month of Ramadan. Why? Because this is the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the month of Ramadan, Jibreel alayhi salam used to come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and recite the full Quran, whatever had been revealed up until then. Because as you know, Ramadan became fard in the second year of Hijrah. In the second year of Hijrah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did about 8 Ramadans with the Muslimin. So every year, Jibreel alayhi salam would come in Ramadan, and whatever had been revealed throughout that year, all of it would be repeated in the month of Ramadan. So to recite the whole Quran in the month of Ramadan is a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So maybe we don't understand all of the Quran. We should try, of course, we should try our best to read the tafasir, to read the proper tafasir, get the correct understanding of what we are reading. But remember, even reciting the Quran in the Arabic language has so much blessing. The hadith says for every letter we get 10 rewards. When we recite Alif, Lam, Mim, already we have 30 rewards. Do we understand the meaning of Alif, Lam, Mim? We don't. But Allah has given us the reward. So why should we let go of that reward? We need the good deeds. We need that in our book of deeds for the day of judgment. So make it a habit to try to recite as much Quran in this holy month and to understand it. So always go into the tafsir, go into the meanings and understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to us. Now, the next very important key feature of Ramadan is the Laylatul Qadr, the night of power, which is the night that comes in the last 10 days of Ramadan. As we all know, in the last 10 days, we're supposed to search for this Laylatul Qadr. It is the night in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the Holy Quran, it is better than 1,000 months, which adds up to about 83 years. So if we get Laylatul Qadr and we do Ibadah and Laylatul Qadr, it's like we have made Ibadah for more than 83 years. None of us are even that much old right now. I don't think anybody in this group is even 83 or more than 50 years old. Or so just that one night. And can I just, if you allow me, I would like to give you the background for this. Why do we have this beautiful night? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was sitting with the Sahaba Karam, and he was narrating to them the narrations of the previous the previous ummahs, of the previous prophets. And as you know, the previous prophets, they used to live long lives. If you look at Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, he lived for more than 950 years. So many of the prophets and many of their people used to live for hundreds of years. So when they lived for that long, they prayed for a long time. They had the time to do ibadah. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the Sahaba Karam this, they became very sad. They said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our lives are so short compared to the previous people. Subhanahu wa ta'ala then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed this night to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam so that his ummah could have the benefit of worshipping the hundreds of years that the previous prophets' ummahs had by simply worshipping one night. See, if you worship one night and you get Laylatul Qadr, if you find Laylatul Qadr in one Ramadan, it's like you have 83 years. And you multiply that by, say, 60. If you've lived for 60 years and you've had 60 Ramadans, that adds up to a lot of years, hundreds and hundreds of years. So this is a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah loves his prophet, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loves his ummah, and so it was the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for his ummah that got us this blessed night. So we should always be grateful to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because it is through him that we received the Quran. It is through him sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we received a lot of these, all of the blessings of Islam. So may Allah, we make dua that Ya Allah grant us the Laylatul Qadr in the next 10 nights. The next important feature is the feature of i'tikaf. I'tikaf also is a sunnah. It's like a spiritual retreat. It is also done in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. It is a very special sunnah that the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to perform. And so if you have the chance, do this very beautiful ibadah. It really helps us connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's basically cutting ourselves off from everything around us and sitting down in one place and worshiping Allah. That's it. For 10 days and 10 nights, you're doing nothing but worshiping Allah. So it's a very, very beautiful experience. If you can do it, I would highly recommend it. The next item, the next key feature is Zakatul Fitr. Zakatul Fitr is different from Zakatul Mal. Zakatul Mal is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Zakatul Fitr, or in other words, we say Fitrana, it's something that we give towards the end of Ramadan, and the purpose of it is to wipe out all of our mistakes that we may have committed in this month. It's, for example, if you know the word Sajdatul Sahar, so when you do your salah, if you make a mistake in salah, if you leave a wajib, for example, towards the end, you make 2 sajdas to clean out the mistake of the salah. Similarly, to clean out any of our mistakes of Ramadan, we have been given this item called Zakatul Fitr, which we give to the poor and needy, so that our sins it's like an expiation, like a kafara for any of the mistakes that we may have made in the month of Ramadan.
Ma'am, is there any specific amount for this, or how do we do this Zakatul Fitr?
Yes, Zakatul Fitr is a specific amount. It's counted based on either wheat or dates or raisins. There are different products. You need to check with your local mosque. Every country has its own rule. So for example, in Bahrain, it's 1.5 BD, 1.5 dinars. Maybe in Emirates, it will be like 15 riyals or 20 riyals. You just check with your local mosque. They will tell you the amount for one particular, for one fitra. So each person has to give their own fitra.
Okay. And we have to do it before the Eid prayers.
Exactly. And the earlier you give it, the better, because if you give it earlier to the poor people, it gives them a chance, to prepare for Eid. So don't just wait till that last Eid Salah. Do it beforehand. It's much better for the poor and needy, inshallah. And the last item, or the last key feature I want to mention for Ramadan is what is called Laylatul Ja'iza. Now, Laylatul Ja'iza is different than Laylatul Qadr. Laylatul Ja'iza is the night of Eid. In other words, your Ramadan has ended, you've sighted the moon for Eid, and what tends to happen? As soon as we sight the Eid moon, khalas, we forget everything we did in Ramadan, and we run to the mall, and we run to everything, and as if Ramadan never happened. But this is the night that we need to be very, very careful, because this is the night in which Allah is rewarding us. It's like graduation night, For us, that night, when we see the Eid moon, we need to make ibadah on that night as well. We need to sit down on our musalla and make ibadah and thank Allah for giving us the Ramadan, and to pray that Allah accepts it from us and to bring us Ramadan again. So don't waste that night, and going and putting henna or don't waste that night. It is a night of ibadah. The night of Eid is a night of ibadah. It is called Laylatul Ja'iza, the night of reward. Missing that night is like, if you're in the Indian Academy and you're in your 10th standard or 12th standard or whatever, and you did your exam, but you didn't show up for the graduation. You didn't show up to get your certificate. So it's a real shame, right? So we need to make sure that we are there when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is distributing the rewards for Ramadan. That is the night of Laylatul Jaizah. Now let's talk about the benefits of fasting. So we talked about the key features, we talked about the background. So let's talk about the benefits. As Muslims, of course, our benefits are purely focused on spiritual. As Muslims, we should be looking at the otherworldly, the ukhrawi benefits. But I will talk a little bit about the medical benefits as well. I'll talk about the social benefits as well. So if you look at the spiritual benefits, in this world, we have so many spiritual benefits because Ramadan really toned our spiritual muscles, so to speak. You know, we learned self-discipline. So we learned that if we can stay away from food and water, if we have that much self-control, surely I can stay away from bad habits. Surely I can quit smoking. Surely, God forbid, someone has gotten into drugs. God forbid they've gotten into any kind of bad habit. It gives them that motivation, that sense of self-discipline, that if I can stay away from food and water, I can stay away from anything. So it's really, really very important. There's a question in the chat. I would really appreciate if we can keep the questions towards the end of the session. I'll give you the answer for this. There's a specific, the question is about the time that women cannot pray. In that time, we are not allowed to fast or to pray or to recite Quran. The best thing in those days is to recite salawat on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because that is something we can do at any time. And it's the best time to read. You cannot read the Quran, but you can read the tafsir. So read tafsir, read books of knowledge, and increase your knowledge in those days when we are not, have been freed from the obligations of Islam because of the pain that the women go through in those days. So coming back to the spiritual benefits, as I mentioned, fasting reveals to us, it gives us confidence. Oh, I can stay away from food and water. Surely I can stay away from bad habits. So it teaches us self-discipline, teaches us self-control, teaches us patience, surely, and helps us to self-evaluate. Because as we know, in Ramadan, a lot of times we commit bad deeds and we say, oh, the shaitan, it was his fault. He got me astray. But in Ramadan, shaitan is in the shackles. Shaitan is not active. Allah has shackled up the shaitan. So any bad deed we do in Ramadan,
आपको बहुत minus point मिल गए.
If you prefer me to speak in Urdu, do let me know. If you know, but I will continue speaking in English. But if you prefer, I can speak Urdu just as well as I speak English. But I will continue speaking in English. So here, the idea is that because shaitan is tied up, whatever bad deeds we are doing is coming from our own nafs. It's coming from our the part of us which is called the nafs. So the month of fasting is a great month to self-evaluate. We cannot blame it on shaitan. We have to take responsibility. So fasting makes us responsible people. It makes us take responsibility for our bad deeds, that it is because of us. So we evaluate ourselves, we become responsible. We learn that we can take control of ourselves and take control of all of our bad deeds. Another very important thing that fasting helps us achieve, if we fast correctly, is to become what is called minimalists. Minimalist is these days is considered a modern concept, but really being a minimalist is like being a simple person, adopting simplicity in life. So if we learn in fasting that we can stay away from many things and live a very simple life. So fasting teaches us to be simple. And of course, it teaches us piety, it teaches us taqwa, as we explained in detail in the previous slides. Now, if we look at the other worldly benefit of fasting, which is the ajr or the reward Allah gives us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Sahih Muslim hadith through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that every good deed of the son of Adam, in other words, every good deed of human beings is multiplied. A good deed is given either 10-fold or 700-fold reward. But Allah has said that the fasting is an exception. For fasting, it is done for Allah and Allah will give the reward. So there is the reward for fasting is limitless. It is not limited by any amount. It is such a great deed in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah says that I will give the reward for this and I will give endless reward. So people that don't fast, and it's really sad, Muslims who don't fast, it's very painful because there are so many benefits associated with fasting. Those who don't fast as Muslims, they are really depriving themselves from huge amounts of benefit. So now let's come to the health benefits. Now, what the health benefits I'm going to mention to you have been actually proven by science. So I took this from a website called healthline.com, and it talks about how fasting controls blood sugar, how fasting controls blood pressure, how fasting controls cholesterol, how fasting controls inflammation, how fasting actually aids in weight loss. Of course, this is all possible if we are truly fasting. And I will get to that in my next slides, because unfortunately, we do something called feasting instead of fasting. So if we are feasting and not fasting, then we will not achieve any of these benefits. So all of these benefits are achieved if we truly do the fast in the proper way that it has been commanded. Fasting can also boost brain function. You know, sometimes you say, oh, I'm so tired, my brain isn't functioning because I'm fasting. That is not the case. If you truly fast the correct way, your brain is actually boosted up. And this is also experienced by people. There are other people who fast in the proper way. It is after they make that iftar that they start to feel drowsy. During the fasting hours, they are very sharp and they're very active because their brain function has been boosted, and this has been proven by science that it can boost the brain function. It can even prevent neurodegenerative disease. Fasting can also increase growth hormones. It can even delay aging. This is science. This is on this website. It could even delay aging. It can even prevent cancer. It can even help in chemotherapy. So there are so many scientific benefits of fasting. Of course, we fast to please Allah, but this is the beauty of our Lord. This is the beauty of our religion, and we need to teach our children this. We should be proud of our religion. We should be proud of the commandments in our religion. All of it is meant not just to give us success in the hereafter, but to give us a lot of success in this dunya as well. And if you look at the social benefits of fasting, of course, you know, when we don't eat and we feel the pangs of pain, of hunger, we feel what the poor people feel. We feel those people who don't have, you know, who are fasting not by choice, but that is their life. They don't have food to eat. So then we become more charitable. We feel more empathy for others. We feel one, you know, we feel one with the ummah. For example, you know, we don't feel like, oh, we are Muslims from India, or we're Muslims from Pakistan, we're Muslims from Bangladesh. No, we are Muslims of the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We all say the same shahada. We all do the same salah. We all do the same Ramadan. We all pay zakat in the same way. We all do hajj in the same way. We are one ummah. We are one people of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So fasting, recognizing that my brother in Malaysia, my sister in Indonesia, my son in India, my daughter in Pakistan, we're all fasting in the same way. So it makes us one with the ummah, and it makes us one even with the people before us. As we mentioned, you know, fasting has been done by humanity forever. So it makes us feel one with all of humanity. So this is my favorite slide. Fast, don't feast. This is the very unfortunate state of affairs with the Muslims. You know, it's really sad, you know, before Ramadan starts, instead of telling us, you know, how to improve our worship, how to get close to Allah, we start getting all these ads. Oh, Ramadan sale, you know, buy this in Ramadan. It's all about food. What is Ramadan is to stay away from food. So we end up having, you know, iftars looking like this, where we have like 20 dishes, whereas in normal days, we only eat 2 dishes. In Ramadan, we eat 20 dishes. This is not Ramadan. This is not the spirit of fasting. You know, this is why we end up actually gaining weight in Ramadan. We end up being lethargic. We don't get any of the real benefits of Ramadan. So please focus on the worship. Keep your food simple. You know, the khajur, the dates, the water, simple things. Eat healthy, eat fruits. Don't eat fried stuff. You know, you eat too much samosa, pakora, you're just gonna be tired and you're just gonna increase your weight, and you're not gonna have the energy to do the ibadah. Ramadan was made for ibadah. It was made to worship Allah. We keep our bodies light so we can do the sujood, we can do the fasting, we can do the worship. So try to keep the focus on the worship and stay away from the lavish iftars. So that was all about Ramadan and Islam. Now I want to just quickly talk about Ramadan and the SDGs. I don't know, have any of you heard of the SDGs?
Yes, ma'am. The Sustainability Development Goals, of course.
Exactly. Excellent. So that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I wanted the children, the youth, especially to understand that our Ramadan is very, very relevant. We are very, very connected to the SDGs. So as Sister Hajra mentioned, the SDGs are the Sustainable Development Goals. And for those who don't know what it is, they are a global agenda. So in 2015, the United Nations got together with all the countries of the United Nations, and they developed these 17 goals. And the purpose is to reach this in 2030, which is not too far away, that's 8 years away. So it's a massive, very ambitious agenda that touches upon every person's life. And the idea is that no one is left behind, that as a global community, we are creating peace, we're creating prosperity for not just people, but for the planet as well. So my question is, how are we as Muslims contributing to the SDGs? So I wanted to bring to your attention that as Muslims, as fasting Muslims in the month of Ramadan, we are contributing very clearly to 3 SDGs, the first 3 SDGs. How are we doing that? If you look at the Zakatul Fitr that I mentioned earlier on, Zakatul Fitr is a wajib, it is an obligation only in the month of Ramadan. I didn't mention Zakatul Mal, because Zakatul Mal does not have to be given in Ramadan. Although many people give it in Ramadan to increase their blessings, but Zakatul Mal is supposed to be given once one lunar year is completed on your wealth, and that could happen at any other time of the year. But Zakatul Fitr is specific to Ramadan. So if every Muslim who is required to give Zakatul Fitr, if they give it, we are contributing towards reduction of poverty, are we not? We're contributing to the poor people. So we are reducing poverty as a requirement, as a required feature of Ramadan. So we are contributing to SDG 1, which talks about eliminating poverty from the face of this earth. Second SDG is the reduction of hunger. So how do we reduce hunger? If you look at the requirements that we as Muslims have been told to feed others. So we fast, but we have been commanded and we have been encouraged to feed the fasting people. So we are told, even if it's if it's just dates or some water or diluted milk, if you give even that to a fasting person, we get so much ajr. And then there's a very beautiful narration I want to share with you, that if someone provides a satisfying breakfast, a satisfying iftar, in other words, you provide them dinner as well. In other words, you are giving them a full fasting meal in this month, that person will get to drink from the Hawd-e Kawthar. You know, the Kawthar, the river of Kawthar on the Day of Judgment. We are told that if we get to drink from that river, we will never feel thirsty again. The Kawthar is a river of paradise. So if we get to drink from that, and we get to drink that from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's blessed hands. So if we drink that, we will never feel thirsty again. So as Muslims, we are given this encouragement. So when we as Muslims read such narrations, we feel excited, we feel encouraged to feed others. So when we feed others, we are contributing to reduction of hunger, are we not? So then as Muslims, Ramadan is directly contributing to the reduction of hunger. And the last SDG that Ramadan contributes to is good health and well-being, because we just went through a whole list of health benefits that fasting contributes to. And we mentioned that these health benefits are not just discovered now, they have been done for hundreds and hundreds of years. So fasting done right contributes to the health of human beings. And so as Muslims, as those who practice Ramadan, we are contributing to SDG number 3. So we should be proud that as Muslims, we are contributing to the global agenda. Ramadan contributes to the 3 SDGs. But of course, we don't fast for this. We fast for Allah. We fast to please Allah. We fast because it is the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So with that, I end my presentation, thanking you and making the dua that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the Laylatul Qadr in these upcoming 10 nights, and that we get the Laylatul Qadr, we get to worship in this blessed night, and we get its benefits, and that we carry through the blessings to the rest of the year. Ramadan just doesn't end with Eid. All of the good habits we develop, all of the passion, all of the worship that we did, that we continue it on in the remaining 11 months. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum.
Ms. Shagufta, I really would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Yes, we all are Muslims. Yes, we all know these things. Yes, it's something that we've been doing right since childhood. But particularly during Ramadan, when you attend a workshop and a session from a lady who is so enthusiastic, who is so full of knowledge, and with what passion you delivered the workshop, ma'am, I'm really, really honored to be a part of this and so thankful for you to actually take out your time and deliver this to our parents and students. It is really going to boost us and, help us again dwindle and, kind of spark the light of Iman. Once again. So thank you so much, Ms. Shagufta. If I can request you to share the PPT with me, I would really love to share the PPT with the parents, the parental community and the student community, and vice versa. I'll be sharing the recording with you.
Sure, my pleasure. It's my pleasure, Sister Haja. Thank you for inviting me. I thank the Indian Academy Dubai. I thank Sister Dr. Bilqis who invited me to your academy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Shagufta.
You're welcome.
Have a nice day. I like it.
Thank you. You too. Masalam.
Yes,